Okay, game 3 action here. And first sight of the board reveals an engine with city and hunting grounds. You could play a pillage maybe every turn, but there's two big problems with the engine. One, there's no trashing, and two, there's no plus buy except for the cities after two piles are empty. And I have no idea how you're emptying two piles here without plus buy prior to that. So the engine is a bit dicey, but oftentimes you still want to build it for whatever reason. But before you get there, you have to deal with the Swamp Hag. Now, if you've watched my previous videos, you know that Swamp Hag is a tricky card for me to deal with, and my opponent opens with the 5 for the Swamp Hag. So that's already indicating to me that I'm on the back foot here, but we'll see how things go. My opponent picks up the Haven alongside the Swamp Hag, and I go for an Ironmonger silver opening, attempting to buy a Swamp Hag of my own here. Unfortunately, I'm able to pull it up before my opponent gets their Swamp Hag down. So 5 here, I'm going to buy the Swamp Hag and try to put one in play every turn. And here my opponent picks up another Haven. These Havens will be good, especially with the Swamp Hag floating around, because you can save your good cards on the turn the Swamp Hag is in effect, and then potentially use them on the next turn when the Swamp Hag won't be there. So here my opponent gets to play the 2 Havens and comes up with 5 to pick up a second Swamp Hag. I play my Swamp Hag here and I'm going to pick up a Haven. At this point, maybe that should have been a silver, but I'm still entertaining some hopes of the engine. There's Ironmonger, which can give you plus actions, and there's this Hunting Grounds, which is very, very powerful draw. Unfortunately, there's no way to trash Hunting Grounds to get duchies, so not even that is possible. And if you've noticed, well, here I have 7 and no Swamp Hag in play, so I'm going to pick up a second Swamp Hag at this point. So we have the same number of Swamp Hags, but if you've noticed, as I was saying before, we have both avoided buying anything when the Swamp Hag is in play. So my opponent manages to get 2 Hags in here, which is, bad for me. If I was thinking about buying anything, those thoughts are now quashed, because there's nothing on this board I think worth 2 curses. Even our province is kind of dicey. That's almost like a duchy you're buying at that point. So my opponent comes up with 9 here, and with no plus buy on the board or in the near future at all from these cities, my opponent goes for the province, and it's hard to argue with province at this point, given that no trashing and no plus buy is available. So I think that's reasonable. I have 4 here, and we'll get another Ironmonger. My Swamp Hags collided there, which is not good, obviously. So still no curses have been distributed yet. We've both been playing around with this Swamp Hag because, yeah, no trashing, and it's a big deal. Like, Hunting Grounds is powerful draw, so if you buy a Hunting Grounds and gain a curse, you can still draw quite a bit. Net 3 cards, I think. Well, not I think, I net 3 cards, which is a lot. So here, I have an option of storing the estate or the copper. If I store the estate, these 6 will be used for the Hunting Grounds. Still trying to build the engine a bit. Maybe I can get enough turns where there is no Swamp Hag to get a city or 2 in a Hunting Grounds. Maybe one more Ironmonger. The Haven can smooth out things. But instead I opt to save the copper and just pass my turn. Again, being very conservative with these curses. I really, really don't want them in my deck, especially on this board. My opponent has a free buy here because I'm not able to stick a Swamp Hag in play, and goes for a 3rd Swamp Hag. So the game is really starting to look like a lot like actually Swamp Hag big money, because there's no draw has been bought, just a bunch of Swamp Hags, and we've been playing around these Swamp Hags very delicately. Again, a $7 hand for me. I can go for hunting grounds or gold even if I want to stick to this money strategy. But I just pass here. I don't want the curse. Maybe this is too conservative. I don't know. And this is the difficult thing for me with Swamp Hag. Was it right to buy a hunting grounds or a gold there? I can't say for certain. So here I have a free turn, meaning I won't get a curse with whatever I buy, and I pick up the third Swamp Hag. I think that's quite enough for my deck structure at the moment. I should be able to get one and play reasonably often. Here I had 7 and not 8, so 8 I would have bought the province and took the curse, but 7, I mean, I passed on 7 last time and I haven't changed my mind here. Seeing these ironmongers at the bottom is not really what you want to see, but it is what it is. You have to, I think you have to trigger the shuffle because there's just 2 ironmongers. You can maybe find your Swamp Hag and put it in play here. A couple havens come out from my opponent, and I presume they've been doing good work. So here, I believe my opponent has another free turn and just picks up a city at this point, presumably to supplement the 3 Swamp Hags in my opponent's deck, and maybe still entertaining thoughts of a hunting grounds at some point. So I play one Swamp Hag and just pass my turn over, still avoiding these curses. Like the plague, my opponent sticks another Swamp Hag down, really keeping me from doing anything meaningful except for playing Swamp Hags of my own. And on 6 here we have the first break. My opponent breaks for hunting grounds and takes the curse with it. So with the city and the ironmonger and 3 havens compared to my one, I could see it is reasonable, and it comes through immediately for my opponent. They're able to draw 4 cards, get up to 8, and I mean maybe they could go for another hunting grounds, or the obvious option is the province, but instead none of those were chosen. I was surprised. I thought it would have been a hunting ground. My opponent goes for the city instead, and just going to pass again to avoid the curses. I'm hoping at this point, with all the purple cards in my opponent's deck, that they stall and I'm able to come back in the end with a nice and clean deck with some cities and some hunting grounds. So again now 6, and seeing my opponent with the breaking a break for the curses, I figure I should do the same, but instead of picking up a hunting grounds here, I go for another Swamp Hag. So I believe this is my 4th Swamp Hag, and as soon as I saw this hand I laughed because I have 3 Swamp Hags and there's very little chance I'm going to be able to play at least 2 of them. So that's bad. Probably my opponent is gonna have some free turns in the near future, and my opponent breaks through the embargo again here to pick up a city. So my first thoughts on the purchase of the city was that, look, it doesn't really make sense because, okay, when they activate, if you empty the city pile, you're gonna get 2 cards, but for every city you've bought nearly, you have a curse with it. So you've turned that city into a cantrip, and then you're relying on deck variants to get you something meaningful. And I really didn't feel like paying $5 for a cantrip. However, that's only the first part of the analysis, as I saw later on in this game. The second part is, well, 2 piles are running if you buy cities under Swamp Hag, the curses and the cities. So what it means is that the city, when you play them now, will be like peddlers, which is not bad in this kind of deck, which is not bad. They become like peddlers and you get to provinces much more frequently, and you have the odd ironmonger to, you know, clean up your hand. So I avoided the cities, and to my detriment, I think I have just 1 city at this point and my opponent has 5. So that isn't good. On 11 here, I managed to get 2 Swamp Hags down, so that's why I'm able to get to 11, and I pick up a province here. I think we both have 3 curses in our deck at this point, and my opponent keeps going for the cities, and I keep avoiding it foolishly. I save a copper there to hopefully buy something decent on this turn, and there's no Swamp Hag, so yay, I could buy something good. That's something good. With the 8 here, I go for the city over the province. I don't know if that was right, but I was hoping that my opponent would buy a city, and then I was hoping to see my city here in this hand so that I would activate and it would collide with the hunting grounds, because I knew city and hunting grounds was in the back and hopefully it would come together given the amount of cards in my deck. None of these things happened. Instead, my opponent now gets the final city, so I'm able to get lots of draw out of the city. And I have less curses in my deck at this point, but I also have less cities, and that's going to be a problem very soon. Because with the Swamp Hags down, you can just buy something and run the curse pile that way, and then the cities become peddlers. And then I lose the game. So obviously storing the hunting grounds here, putting another hag in, and not going to buy anything. There's nothing really worthwhile. Maybe another hunting ground. So the city split ended up 8 for my opponent and 2 for me. So that's bad. I should have been going after the cities, but I only carried out the first part of the analysis, which is, you know, bad of me. I should know better than that, I think. Anyways, my opponent is able to play a hunting grounds and 2 swamp hags this turn and buy a province, so that's great. That's a great turn for my opponent, but with the curses in their deck, I think they're still behind on points. However, that is not really an issue once that curse pile empties. And now I avoid buying things here just to avoid emptying that curse pile, because at this point I realize, oh wait, the cities were worth it and I only have 2 of them. Well done, son. Well done. And I'm not going to not play my swamp hag. It's just $3 on the table that I won't play. That doesn't make sense to me, so I kind of have to play the Swamp Hag. My opponent buys a province and picks up the last curse, so now their cities are live with money and buys too, so they're even better than peddlers. My apologies for saying they were just like peddlers. And you see 5 of them come out and 3 Swamp Hags and enough money to buy a province, so yeah, this is the end of the game, because the residual money from the Swamp Hag ensures that my opponent can pick up the last province. However, they go for the duchy and estate play here. Maybe I might be able to get the last province if they get the penultimate one, and that would cause me to win. So good play on my opponent's part here, but with the residual money from the Swamp Hag here, 14 is a easy, very easy province and duchy, and there's very little I can do about 9 points. I don't think I can get 9 points to tie up this game potentially. I can't even get 3 points. I could get 1 point. And hope my opponent has an absolute shocker of a turn, but that is not going to happen. The hunting grounds comes out and 6 is enough for a duchy. And that's just going to put me way behind. This is 11 points behind, and I just don't have the kind of money to be able to come back in the game. And my opponent goes for the 3 pile play there with the triple estate instead of picking up the duchy, making it easier for them to end the game, obviously. And they do so. So that's game 3. Thanks for watching. As always, Swamp Hag feedback is welcome. Let me know.